It's time to have you with us. It's great for our National Braille Literacy Month. We are rounding that month up with part two of a webinar series featuring Braille Brain. Specifically, we will cover today supporting Braille literacy with Braille Brain, advanced technical and application. Again, if you were not with us for part one, be sure to catch that archived recording on our YouTube channel because you will be amazed at the capacity and value of this new tool that is absolutely free to use. Returning to present is APH's product manager for Braille Brain, Sarah Welch. And Sarah knows this information like the back of her hand, and she is perfect to be sharing what you need to know about this resource. Now, what can you expect to gain from today? What can you expect to learn? Well, today, by the end of our time, you will be able to differentiate the instructional value of each Braille Brain pathway. That's UEB, Nemeth, literacy-specific paths, and assessment tools. You also will be able to integrate advanced Braille Brain features into instruction by matching platform components to specific student or even client needs. And lastly, you'll be able to evaluate instructional scenarios to determine how Braille Brain can increase student independence, accuracy, and mastery. And just at the thought of those learning objectives, I know that you are already seeing the value of just how much is packed into this product. So, Sarah, thank you so much for taking the time and coming in and helping us to better understand this resource.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Sarah Welch, like Amy introduced. Pleased to have you all here with us today. And for some of us, it is a very cold day. So we briefly went past the slide really quick, but just want to say if at any point you have any questions or comments, please put in the chat. I'll try to monitor that as closely as I can, but want to make this as valuable to you as we can. So if you have specific questions, like that's what we're here for. So kind of reviewing, like Amy was saying, looking at part one. So for our first webinar that we did a couple weeks ago, at that point, the viewers of that webinar, about 2/3 were not familiar with Braille Brain before coming. So great that they were able to attend. And we went over some of the basic structure of the site, which is broken down into UEB Foundation, which is basically the basics of Braille Brain, the basics of UEB, Unified English Braille, as well as math. Assessments, which is more how to kind of gauge reading level. Then UEB Advanced, which is a more advanced part of UEB math. And then Nemeth, which is a different way to write math in Braille. And then Cheryl was co-presenting with me, and she went over some of the assessment section and some future plans she has with that, including a guidebook and how to validate the results better and more training on how to use it more effectively. So that's just a very brief takeaway of part one. Like Amy was saying, for more in depth, please go back and watch that. So just curious, for those that did attend the first session, did anyone try out Braille Brain with someone after the first session? And please put that in the chat.
We would love to know if you had gone in and tried that out. We had shared the link about Braille Brain and wondered if it caught your curiosity enough to sample it out. So if you don't mind sharing, and maybe it is even, you know what? Not yet, but I will. We know that they are starting to come in. Absolutely. It was a great experience. I know that a friend in Iowa has yes with an exclamation point. It said, this is a great comment. Yes, I tried, but it didn't work with a refreshable Braille display. So that might be something for us to troubleshoot and talk about more. And we've had individuals say it that, have gone, explored it. Ooh, and this is what we love, Sarah, that it has also gone and talked to local TVIs about it. So not only are you attending our, what you're getting from the webinar, but going and sharing the good news. So there are plenty who took you up on that invitation, Sarah, and gave it a try, looked at it, and explored its uses.
And definitely thanks everyone for answering. As far as your fishbowl Braille display, that might be something to troubleshoot off the air just to make sure I'm giving you the best information, but that's good feedback to know because it should work. So we can definitely help you get that situated. They were also asking for a link to part one. I'm not sure if that's been posted yet, Amy, but if it is, I'm sure you'll find that and
I
link it.
will. What I will do is I'm going to post the URL to Braille Brain and that recording momentarily.
So yeah, thank you all for that. Had tried it out with someone new for that. I mean, that's what this resource is here for. And I especially love to advocate for some of our resources that are free because for a lot of people, money is tight and it's always good to know what free resources we have out there that we can utilize. Oh, and someone found it very nice for reviewing forgotten Braille contractions. It's a great use case for it, for sure. So we talked about this a little bit in the last one, but I just wanted to kind of clarify a bit more between the Nemeth Code versus UEB math pathway. And like I said a bit earlier, Braille Brain does have both available. So just to ask before we get into kind of the differences between the two, I know that in the US, different states do different codes. Does anyone have a particular code they use? You use Nemeth, UEB math, both? Ooh, problem with the
Yeah.
pages being unresponsive in Chrome. That's good feedback to check into.
Well, we have a lot of people putting comments in. This is something that is so easy to be able to answer. Both Nemeth in Florida, IEP team decision. We see that often. North Carolina, all UEB. So there definitely is a mixture, but both are represented. And they keep coming in too. Thank you for sharing that information. It's always interesting to know what teachers are experiencing firsthand.
For sure. Exactly. It's always just interesting how different areas use different ones. Um, so kind of like I said before in the previous ones, I mean, obviously you all are familiar with the two, but just a little bit of background. So one is not necessarily better than the other. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. Originally, Abraham Nemeth made his Braille code, the Nemeth Braille code, named after him in 1952. It's been revised a couple of times since then. And at that point, the common code that was being used was tailored code from England to represent math. And for him, it had too many grouping symbols. So he was trying to make it just a more simplified way for himself to write it for his own studies. He ended up submitting it to the Joint Uniform Type Committee, who at the time was responsible for the Braille code in the USA and England. And then, of course, that became a major way for math to be represented in Braille. Then UEB came along, Unified English Braille, which was adopted in the US in 2012. The International Council for English Braille approved it in 2004. And the International Council for English Braille has 8 countries, and I've seen we have a couple of these represented today. So we have Australia, Canada, Ireland, Nepal, New Zealand, South Africa, the United Kingdom, and the USA. And here in the USA, our specific Braille authority is the Braille Authority of North America. Some of that you might not need to know, but it's interesting to know kind of the structure and background to that. So like we've seen here, people use both depending on where you are and what your use cases are, and both are on Braille Brain. So if we look at the next slide here. Yeah, it seems like we're going to be technical. Yeah, it definitely varies per student. So if we look at some of the assessments, and I'll go over to show Braille Brain here in a moment. Kind of the important thing to know about the assessment section is these are based off of reading level, not grade level. And I'll go ahead and get over to that screen. So you should see the Braille Brain website now. I also put the URL in the chat if anybody wants to go there directly. So it's just braillebrain.aphtech.org. So once you're on here, the header, which is the same on every page, will have the home, UEB Foundation, assessments, UEB Advanced, Nemeth, and then use 6 dot entry. So if we're looking at the assessments, when we select that, this has a list from units going from pre-kindergarten down to 12th grade. And like we said before, this is reading level, not grade level. And this is based off of Atos. And the last time Cheryl touched on how you can use these to kind of predict where your student is at reading grade wise. So you would say, like, if I'm the one being assessed and you think, well, maybe I'm around like a 3rd grade reading level, then you could start a level or 2 below and test and go up through and see kind of at what break point are they, the percentages is higher and correct. And it can help gauge where reading level is. And that's part of the work she's doing, is getting a better guide of how to utilize that more effectively as well. So if we look here at assessment 8, so that'd be grade 8, and I'm going down to grade 8, sort passage C, to give an example of this. So this is Atos 8.2, and it tells us the name of this is Casablanca, and the word count is 94. So I would select a button at the start called Start, and it would start calculating how long you're reading. And when you're done, you'll select Reading Complete. And so it's showing a whole series of a passage in SimBraille, which is simulated Braille. And it will also come up on Refresh World Braille display. At the bottom is a download Braille button where you can download a file to emboss the Braille, and you can also download the answer as well. So let's say if I finish, then it's saying that I read 181 words per minute. Didn't really, just the amount of time that we had there. And if I had made 4 errors, you would submit how many errors you'd put in there. Then it would tell me that I got a 96% accuracy and I got 174 correct words per minute. Now, what this doesn't show, if you select the answer section, it'll come up with the text in print. And again, you can download this as well and have it represent it however you want it. It doesn't show you which ones were got wrong because you're reading this and you're inputting how many errors you got. So just something to be aware of. That's interesting comment about Ireland. Ireland, unfortunately, doesn't really teach Braille math, bar numbers 1 to 10, and a few short symbols. We have a lot to catch up. Be interested to hear more about that. I'm not as familiar with how Braille is handled over there. So going back to assessments. So that's just one example of the assessments in the assessment page. So you can also, there's other types of this that we went over briefly last time as well. So in addition to the short passages, there's long passages that are the same format, just longer. Word lists vary a bit by grade, but same format in that you would select a word list in the level that you want, and you have a start button, then a stop button at the end, and it times how long it took you, and then you input how many you got incorrect. So on the first grade here, I selected 1A. There's 15 words for this one. And then at the bottom, I can select the answers and it'll show me what the answers were. And just like before, you can download to get those answers as well. This is kind of just a brief overview. Cheryl mentioned that she, in the last presentation, really liked the dictations, which I apparently need more of. And these also have places where you can download text versions of the audio problems. But essentially, you would, for each question, listen to an audio file, or you can download it, like we said, and then you would type in what you heard, and then it'll at the bottom, you can check the answers and tell if you're correct or not. And I'm not going to take time to do that right now. So right now, I'll be incorrect. Oh, good question. What is dictation? So dictation is, so for instance, if I would select to play a file here, which I don't have the sound linked at the moment, I can do that here in a bit if that'd be helpful, but it would read out. So like, let's say like I'm reading the slide right here, like assessments and error feedback. And so can you understand what I'm saying and then write in exactly what I said? So if I say cat, do you write cat? If I say dog, do you write dog? And then, so I just downloaded the passages there and it came in a TXT file. So for that first one, it's saying the cells inside you need air, period. They need it to make the energy your body needs to grow. And then it has 4 other questions on that. So it's just part of comprehension. Can you listen to something and then write what you listened to? But great question for that. Oh, another great question. So Cheryl asked, what do the different grades refer to in the list of assessments? So let me go back to that page. So there is a read more section with a whole bunch of text explaining some of the history behind these, and if you want to look into more additional research. But the short answer is like kindergarten is the like average reading level for kindergarten. So like if I was a student, like I might be in 10th grade, but maybe I'm reading at a 12th grade reading level. So it's what reading level the learner is reading at versus like the actual grade that they're in. That is a great question there. Chris, are you typing with QWERTY or using 6-key entry? So you'd be using the 6-key entry. That is something to check if you have a keyboard that supports that or not. Most of them do. So 6-key entry is your home room. So that's SDFJKL. And there's ways you can test to make sure your keyboard works with that as well. So again, this is a lot of information. But just kind of wanted to give a brief overview of the assessments. The one we haven't looked at right now today is a multiple choice. And so these, I selected a 2nd grade one. It has questions represented in Braille, and then it's multiple choice. So you have 4 options that you can select the answer with. And so you would go through, and I'm not going to take the time to actually do this, but at the bottom of the page, you can check the answers and it'll show you which ones you got correct. Like I completely guessed on question 1 and I got that correct. So go me. But yeah, so these would be represented either in Braille on here if you have connect to a virtual Braille display. If you do have issues of that, like our one friend, we're going to connect afterwards and troubleshoot that. And I'll make sure to give my email for the end as well. But it should work with any virtual Braille display that you have hooked to it. But great questions, and please do keep them coming. So one advantage of this is you can kind of like self-pace your learning. Like we said in the previous webinar, so you have the foundation, which is kind of like your basics intro to UEB Braille, and it has some beginning of the math, and then the more advanced math is in the UEB Advanced, or you can go over to Nemeth, which is the other way to represent math in Braille. So you can redo these as many times as you want. And there's also some other resources you can use for more practice. So I'm going to go over to my other. So these are some websites I have up, and I'm going to put these in the chat as well. But these are some other, most of them are free. This one up here right now is not free, but resources from APH of other ways that you can have extended practice or additional things to look at for Braille. So on the website right now, I have Braille Bridge pulled up, which is a really new thing that just came out from APH. And so it is Braille practice reading materials for adults specifically. Um, and it's not free, but if you get the digital version, which comes in either contracted Braille, uncontracted, those are just $6, which for materials for us is a lot cheaper than a lot of things we have. So great resource and really new, just came out. Some other sources that to be aware of, and I'll go ahead make it over to my Word document and I'll put these links in the chat. Oh, they're not going to link like that. Okay. Well, there's the list, and I'll do the links individually. So I'll do that here in a moment. So Page Braille is another good website. So this website was originally designed to be used with a Page Connect, which is a device that goes on a Perkins Brailler that basically makes it into a Braille keyboard. So it gives you digital output. But under their Learn section or their Translate section, you don't have to have that device to use this. It's another free, anyone can make an account. But it also, like Braille Brain has practice. Some of it's more gamified. And it's just additional practice that you can have for learning Braille. It is doesn't go into as much as the deep technical math, and it doesn't have Nemeth currently. So there are some limitations, but for free, another option of resources to look at. So the Learn section is your lessons. Translate is a translate tool, and it is designed to be more kind of like a one-off. It's not a full-on transcription, but it does have a drop-down menu where you can select what type of Braille you want. So it could be English grade 1, uncontracted, English grade 2, which is contracted, all the way to like French, German, so on. So let me put that URL in the chat here. It's the Page Braille link. Another good free resource is the Nemeth tutorial. So this is all just focused on Nemeth, and you use 6 dot entries, so that's your 6 home row keys. And it's more exercises and practice on Nemeth specifically. And this came out closer to time when UEB was getting more popular. And so this page I clicked on, it's lesson 3.1 of multiplication cross. And it shows in SimBraille the symbol for the multiplication cross, gives an explanation, and then the next page would be exercises with that. So just another great free resource to be aware of. Yeah. Then the companion to that is the UEB math tutorial. Same type of thing, except UEB math. Pretty much identical website. So that would also have different lessons and then exercises for UEB math. And it does get into more advanced, like integrals, chemistry, so on and so forth. Multiple chapters, 6 key entry. Braille Blaster is a download, and this is more of a transcription. Not seeing the links. Gotcha. I'm trying to put them in.
I'll take care of it. Don't worry, Sarah. I'll take care
I
of it.
will also, I try to make a full list with all these together. I will quickly update that as well. But it just submit as plain text instead of URLs. So Braille Blaster is a download, and it's specifically like for transcription, but it's free. Anyone can use it. And it's just, again, another good resource to have. And then, of course, we have our APH Hive. And so this is the homepage for it, but it has different resources that you can go to. And it's just a whole collection, as well as professional development communities. So you can like talk and interact with other people. And then this is the Rules of Unified English Braille guidebook. And So if we look at the BANA website, so the Braille Authority of North America, so for those in the US, this is our Braille Authority. They have the most up-to-date guidebooks and code books, so always good to have that resource. Depending on where you're at with your Braille journey, it might be too much information, but it's always good to know where to go to look up something if you do have a more advanced question. And then the parent of that would be the International Council on English Braille, which is the organization that's over the subsidiary organizations that BANA is a part of that. And so also good to be aware of that. So a lot of information. But what we're getting at is I want to look at what are some potential use cases and how could you utilize these different resources with Braille Brain being a big part of that. So let me get back over to the webinar. Okay, so like we said before, advantage of a lot of these, including Braille Brain, is the self-paced learning. So you can redo as many times as you want. You can use other resources for more practice, or you can start for a different resource, learn it, and then come here. There's also some other resources that you're probably aware of, such as building on patterns that, depending on who you're doing Braille with, can be a really good resource. So if we're looking at the advanced navigation, so this includes switching codes, locating advanced practice, and tracking progress. So on Braille Brain, one thing that's coming out, so you can track your progress yourself, so you can see how many did you get right on a particular lesson. But an upcoming feature, which is not out yet, but on the way, is you're going to be able to print out a certificate. And the certificate doesn't really mean anything officially, but it will show you on there what you scored and which ones did you attempt. So just kind of a good way to track what you've done. And then the PageBro website, if you use that one, you can make an account there and it'll keep track over time what you're doing. So that's a lot of information at once. So how can we use these together? So for implementation, if we look at user scenarios and application. So I'm going to walk through the first one and what I would perhaps recommend doing. And then we can look at some other scenarios here. So first scenario, or scenario A. So we're looking at an early Braille learner. They're in elementary school. Their goal is letter recognition, contractions, and what can we look at as recommended units and activities. So an important thing to know about this particular learner is I'm assuming that this student also needs literacy skills. So we mentioned this in the last webinar, but we haven't mentioned it in this one. So if we look at Braille Brain, and I'll go over to that real quick. So it has all these modules like the Braille alphabet and numbers. So it's really good at like walking through the Braille code, but it doesn't walk through literacy skills. So like your phonics and all those foundational skills that you need when you're learning to read. So we'd want to use an additional curriculum with this. So like if they're in elementary school, I'd probably be using something like BOP, building on patterns. There's also other curriculums out there, Mangold, and there's advantages and disadvantages to all of them. So whatever works best for your use case. But that's what I would be looking for. You could also be using just their regular classroom materials for literacy skills and then using this as some extra practice, as well as I'd probably look at the PageBro website as extra practice as well for that. So in particular for this student, if you're just starting at the very, very beginning, you'd start with the UAB Foundation section, Unit 1, the Braille alphabet and numbers, and then work your way up from there. So a lot of information. Any questions on that specific one or comments?
Nothing that's coming in the chat as of right now, so I'll keep monitoring it if you want to move on, and I'll watch it closely for you.
Sounds good. So if we look at our second scenario, I want you to think about this one and think about, of what we've been thinking about today, what are some resources you might use? And I'll give you a minute or two to think about that and put them in the chat. And then we'll kind of like review and go over what are maybe some other ones that we could use. So scenario B, we're thinking about a middle or high school learner, and they are starting to learn Nemeth. So their goal is algebra readiness as well as Nemeth fluency, and to demonstrate switching pathways. So like knowing when to switch between the different Braille codes. So what of the resources we've talked about today, or you may know other resources, might you want to start with for this particular scenario?
So we have definitely classroom materials, so things that are already happening within the gen ed classroom. And, maybe with that too, there is a mixture of, teacher made sort of things. Thank you for the dropping into the chat also the resource that there's the resource from PAS to literacy that has to do with Nemeth curriculum. So those are some good resources that are mentions that have been put in so far in the chat.
And those are both very correct. I would agree with both of those. Customized student-centered code practice. Nemeth symbols library for sure. Oh, that is one I didn't give a link to earlier. We can give a link to is a link to the actual Nemeth guidebook. So for the online resources, of course, in Braille Brain, you would have the whole Nemeth section to go through. So you'd find, what's the closest unit to what you're working on. Are you working on spatial math? Well, there's a spatial math section. Are you working on chemistry? I would also recommend looking at the Nemeth tutorial, which just has more practice as well as additional lessons. Braille Brain is a great resource, but that probably is its one shortfall, is that what it has is fantastic, but also has limited amount of practice. So once you've done it once, that's great, but then you might need some additional things to practice so you're not doing the same thing over and over and over again. But yeah, Path to Literacy is always a good resource as well. So let's move on to the next one. Scenario C. So this, thinking of an adult that's new to vision loss, and their goal is structured independent learning, and what might be some suggested lessons or pacing tools for this particular learner. And it's not mentioned here, but I would assume that being an adult losing vision later in life, that they already have their literacy skills, so that we're not going to need to go through a building on patterns per se, which is a great curriculum, but also aimed at a much younger user. So as far as printed materials, like we said earlier, there's the Braille Bridge, which you can get digitally or in print, which is the new practice materials for adults. So they're materials that are not quite as childlike, which just makes it nice. Hadley courses, that's a good option for sure. That's not through us, but a great program for sure. Another printed resource would be the Illinois Braille series, which is a fantastic resource that not everyone knows about. Braille 2, yeah. Middle and high school math also released Braille files. For sure, yeah, any resources you got, always good to use. On the specific Braille Brain site itself, I'd be looking at the UEB Foundation and starting with the Braille alphabet and numbers. That you do need to kind of start from the start to at least have a basic foundation from that. But then from there, if there's a specific thing you want to learn, just go to that specific section or lesson. If they're working with someone in particular, um, it might be suggestible if they're perhaps not as comfortable with technology and the person they're working with has access to an embosser. They might be more comfortable if they have their materials embossed for them to start out that way on their journey and then go into a more digital setup. So lots of different options. Mangled is always a good option for sure. Quick introduction to letters. Someone mentioned a center that has a correspondence class for Braille. Always a good option if you have one available close to you or close to that learner. In person can't be beat, especially as you're getting started out. Okay, looks like slowing down in the chat, so I'll move on to the next one. So scenario D. So in this particular case, we're looking more at like a paraprofessional training module, or it could just be people like in the classroom that are working with students. And their goal is building Braille support capacity. So one potential use case could be they use Braille Brain for skill checks. Can anybody think of any other resources or ways to use Braille Brain? Someone recommended Hadley again, always a great option.
Oh, and a great comment when we have new assistants hired to work with a Braille student, they are given several online training to choose from, including this one. So how great to know that Braille Brain is already being used out there. There are some different things that you can choose from, and perhaps, oops, didn't have my video on, picking what goes best with the learner. Another one, I think this as a training option, my last para loved the online access with immediate feedback. So definitely, it sounds as though we're hearing that this tool that we're talking about today in the webinar has been successful in the classroom, especially with helping paraprofessionals gain quick skills.
Totally agree with that. No one's mentioned it yet. I would also mention the Page Braille website, where it is kind of more gamified and it is in smaller chunks generally. It can be kind of a good quick review or a quick intro to something. Oh, I see somebody mentioned UAB Online. That's another fantastic online resource as well. I know, like for me, like the more we can get awareness about different materials that are out there, the better. So always glad to hear about materials and to share the word for sure. Another particular use case that I was thinking of for this one could just be kind of like a quick review before working with a student, in particular if there's like a math symbol, or like I don't quite remember what this one is. Likewise, you could look that up in a guidebook, but this could also be a way to kind of look it up with some more examples of how might this be used as well. Oh, what was the game style one? Here, let me go over, I'll get the screen on there. So the more game style is Page Braille. And so it's Page, P-A-I-G-E, Braille, BRAILLE.com. And I will copy this again and put it in the chat. Oh, Amy got it there right before I did. But you would want to go to the Learn section. So for instance, I've selected Learn at the top of the screen. So this is fully, you can use it with a screen reader. We did find that some people who are newer to the field, or they're perhaps like family members of someone who's trying to learn Braille, aren't as familiar or comfortable with screen readers. So there is a toggle at the top that you can toggle where it will read out loud to everything on the page. So it's not a full screen reader, but it basically works inside this website. As well, beside that is a toggle for musical keys. So essentially, like each key would be a different note, and that's more just for fun. But if we look at a particular lesson, so if I'm looking at the alphabet level 1, so that's A, L, D, T. If I write, so it's a lot more gamified. So it comes up with a character on the screen, and it's like practice embossing Braille. Press space to get started. So I would just have my pretty keyboard that I'm using with this. Again, if you have that particular device, the Page Connect, you can use that, which turns your Perkins Brailler into a Bluetooth keyboard essentially to give output. But if I press space, it said excellent. It says A is .1. If I had toggled the sound on, then it would read that out loud to me. So if I do and then press space, I got it correct. So keep going. Of course, you can get it wrong and it'll be, oops, that's not correct. But it's just a more gamified way to get that immediate feedback. I'll bet it is overall, it keeps to a more simplistic level of Braille currently than Braille Brain, but this is a growing website. More is being added all the time. So always good to check back on it as well. But great question on that. And this is also the one, if you go to the translate section, whatever you type in there, this is a more basic translation tool, but you can select between different Braille codes, which can be helpful. And then you can download and save what you had typed in as well, if needed. So, but fantastic question on that. That is also a newer resource not everyone is aware of. Oh, and like Rise is saying, yeah, for sure, there's lots of apps out there as well, both Android and Apple. That's always a good option to have. There's a bunch of them out there. I'm sure I don't know the names of all of them, but a lot of good options out there for sure. So I do need to get you the list of all the resources together. Does anyone have any questions while I'm getting that together really quick?
And just know, Sarah, while you are getting that together, in the follow-up email, I will make sure to include everything that you have put into, the chat today. So the chat can roll pretty quickly. And if you
For sure.
find yourself doing that, don't worry. We've got your back, and I'll make sure that that follow-up email includes the information you need of all the links. We do have a question. I don't know, Sarah, off the top of your head. I admit I am not knowledgeable enough to answer. Are many of these accessible via Braille displays? I know that we talked about that with Braille Brain in our last session. Would you be able to remind us about Braille Brain and the Braille displays?
Okay, got one more link and then yes. The short answer is yes, they should. I know one of our friends on here said they're having an issue with that. I would love to troubleshoot that, but in general, Braille Brain and Page Braille, as well as the 2 tutorials we listed, should be able to work with your refreshable Braille display. That being said, if you run into an issue, do please reach out and let us help you troubleshoot that. could be a variety of things. But yes, they should work, and as well with screen readers as well, they should work with. And then not on PageBraille, but on Braille Brain specifically, you do have options to download Braille files or text files. So you can either like print, emboss, whatever you need to do. Try to give you as many options you have to cover as many different scenarios as we could. So let me get my links in the chat here. And like Amy said, she'll also send these out. So that's all the links together for the resources listed today. So I just noticed I didn't put Braille Brain on there, so I should probably put Braille Brain on there as well. um, let's see. Braille Academy app, another great one. Oh, my email, as far as like troubleshooting or whatnot, you can always reach out to customer service to help troubleshooting. My specific email, my name is Sarah Welch, Welch. So my email would be swelch, SWELCH at aph.org. I'll also put that in the chat.
So I know that there were two individuals at the beginning who shared some great feedback that we needed to hear about pages being unresponsive in page braille and so forth. So just know that we have that information also um, written down so that we can be sure to address that and know who to get in touch with. But exactly with Sarah's email that's put into the chat window, you can reach out directly with some of those troubleshooting questions that you might have.
Yeah, and I think one you were mentioning was some people were noticing they were having some issues with pages being unresponsive in Chrome. I would love if people, if that was you that mentioned that, please let me know more about that, and I'd be curious to look into it because it should work, but you can help us troubleshoot what we need to do to fix that. So
Do you by
appreciate
chance,
all.
Sarah, have a closing slide that does have your the visual information? I can't recall for your contact because we can showcase that as we close things up as well, if that's
I do
helpful.
not. I
No
could always
worries.
just put my face back on the screen.
Nope,
Um,
it's all good. It is all good. I am just, I don't want to cut things off. If there are questions, we can remain on here for a few more minutes to address those. But for those, since we have reached, the end of the content, I want to honor that time that you have a few minutes extra in your day, which we don't always get to. So I'm going to just pause.